turn here. All right. So we got a microphone that works. We have Instagram Live. We have YouTube Live. This is going to be fun. We're talking about skin. Now, I say this almost like a little bit comically or tongue in cheek because I don't know, you might be able to see, but I have kind of like a little bit of a bump on my eye because I was in a basketball game yesterday and I got hit in the face as just part of it, just one of those incidental type of things. So I have kind of like a welt on my face. So go figure. Of course, we're talking about skin and that's what happens. But um, hey, such is life, right? Okay, skin health. This is probably something I think that is very either misconstrued, misunderstood, or not dealt with properly. And I see so many folks who go to things like steroid creams and um alcohol type swabs. I know when I had acne, especially in like my late teens and early 20s, I was using like those alcohol swabs, like the oxy pads, I think they were called, and those things are brutal for your skin. Over time they're really going to dry you out, but so that's like a big deal. And so many people rely on this stuff. And it's really the point is like, how do we get skin that we don't necessarily need to worry about this stuff anymore? How do we get clear skin? How do we keep it? And then what are some of like the lifestyle things that are really going to play a role here? So we have today's talk. So I wanted to start with like some fun facts about skin, which is it's always nice because it's always great to put into context like how amazing the body is and how we just get to where we are and how it all kind of fits together, right? So the skin actually accounts for roughly 15% of your total body weight, which is pretty interesting. Approximately, the average adult has approximately 21 square feet of skin and weighs, again, roughly like 9 pounds. Again, so roughly 10-15% of your body weight. And contains over 11 miles of blood vessels, which is so cool. So like we have all these tiny blood vessels that branch off bigger vessels that not only innervate with sensory nerves, but also supply blood and take blood away. It's so cool. The average person, on average, again, adult, has about 300 million skin cells, and a single square inch of skin can have about 19 million cells and up to 300 separate sweat glands. Now, I tend to sweat a lot, so maybe there's even more than that in someone like me. Did you also know that your skin is home to actually more than 1,000 different species of bacteria alone? Now, you might think like, oh, that's nasty. No, we actually need that stuff. And your skin renews itself every 28 days. So you literally shed your skin and become a new person every 28 days. So that might be where you might have heard some of that from. And because of that, your skin is constantly shedding dead cells, roughly 30,000 to 40,000 skin cells are coming off your body every minute. Every minute. Yeah, you might think that's gross, but this is for all of us at all times. This is part of the human experience. That equates if you were just kind of, there shedding skin, standing in one place. Maybe you might have had a pet lizard who does this and it's a little bit more obvious, but we do the same thing. And in fact, it would be enough to add up to roughly 9 pounds of dead cells per year that we shed off. Now, a lot of you already know this, like the skin is the largest organ in the human body, but like we have a very superficial relationship with it. Like, for example, we know, first of all, one of the most important things I think I learned about the skin is that the skin is effectively your second mouth. And if you look at it through that context, then maybe it's a good way to look at things as far as what we put on our skin. So what we ultimately become is the product of what we eat, what we drink, what we think, what we breathe, and what we put on our skin. So everything we're putting in is going to get absorbed one way or another. This is why I make such a big deal about things like deodorants And during this time of year, things like sunscreens, like if you're not using something that's natural and ideally none, and we've talked about that in separate other videos. I'm not going to rehash that here because that gets me shadow banned, but there are other ways you can do things and how you work through it. And more importantly, what you put on your skin every day matters. So, what you shower with, what soap you use, what deodorant you use, what skincare products you use, cosmetics with women, up to 60% of these products get absorbed through the skin. And we're seeing those numbers are actually going up. So if you checked out the post I made this morning, like a lot of this stuff can get absorbed through the skin. Thermal papers. So if you work in retail or ever went shopping and got a receipt, those are loaded with BPA. That stuff can literally get absorbed through the skin. So important to kind of keep that up or keep that in mind as we go here. So what are some of the functions of the skin? What does it do? The first and most obvious one is protection. Sensation. It allows us to feel things in space. It helps us regulate heat, keep heat in, or let heat out if we're overheating. It controls evaporation via sweat. It allows us to communicate, right? I can communicate with my face. I could communicate with my hands. I could communicate talking. Storage. So a lot of water and a lot of lipids are actually stored in the skin, and it allows for the synthesis of hormones like vitamin D, which is a misnomer. It excretes things like sweat, and urea is actually found in sweat. So that is a major toxic byproduct that we have to eliminate. And then it also absorbs things, as we already mentioned. So, there's a lot that the skin can do. And again, it's not even just bacteria. There are viruses, there are yeasts, there are all of these things on the skin at any given time. So we have a lot here that you can that goes into your skin. And we have to understand that the skin is an ecosystem in and of itself. So I like talking about this in fractals, and I like talking about this in the context of, you know, who is, coming on, or who is, how do I put this? Of how we fit into the role that we're in in the context of the world. So we have our own ecosystems inside of us. I talk about the gut microbiome, the flora. We have a flora on our skin. We are essentially the microbes in the context of the planet, right? And the soil. So we are very small when we look at the context of that. It's fractal. So, and we're noticing as we're using things like pesticides, like herbicides, things of that nature, fungicides, we're destroying our soil, and we're seeing this trend in a lack of diversity, not only in the soil, but also in human beings. And one of the warning signs can be what's going on with our skin. Now, again, we have an ecosystem. It's not one type of bacteria. There are thousands, or at least over 1,000 different bacteria on our skin. And it's not like one is worse than the other. It's about keeping them in check. It's about a balance. So, if we're doing things that strip all this all the time, it can allow for an overgrowth or infection. And this is primarily what happens with fungal infections. So when we talk a lot about dysbiosis or leaky gut, or even what we call quote unquote parasites, most of the time, it's usually a fungal or yeast overgrowth due to stripping that area. I was talking about alcohol wipes. This would be the equivalent of using antibiotics inside the body. And that can also represent itself as skin. And it's not just the skin, that the health of the skin itself that is going to affect how it looks. So we have all of our detoxification organs. So the intestines, the colon and the small intestine, that's going to affect the health of our skin. The kidneys, the liver. Like if we are not detoxifying appropriately, that is going to affect how our skin appears. So are things like adrenals and the thyroid. These are all going to play a role in our skin. And a bigger part of this, the last one I want to talk about, is the lymphatic system itself. And this is important because what does the lymphatic system is ultimately, and I know I've said this before, but I have to keep repeating it because it's this important. So our body has primarily two fluids. We have blood and we have lymph. Blood is roughly 20% of the total fluid in our body, and the lymph is actually the other 80%. the lymphatic system itself is called the sewer system of the body. It gets things out. We have the blood that functions as the kitchen. It brings the nutrients, it brings the oxygen to cells, to tissues. They use up whatever they need to use up, and then they have to get rid of waste. Very similar to how we work as human beings. We eat food, we get energy, we get nutrients in, and then we use what we need, we take what we need, and we get rid of the rest out the other end. Every single one of our cells does the same thing, just at a microscopic level. And that adds up. That's a lot of waste that can add up over time. This is where the lymphatic system comes in. It allows it is the bathroom, so to speak, in this equation. So as we would use the toilet to get rid of our waste, the cells use the lymphatic system. What's going on? How are you? And if it gets backed up, think about it. Like, what would be the equivalent of if your kidneys get backed up, for example? Would you continue to flush the toilet in your house if you know it's backed up? No, it's going to overflow at some point. The same thing actually happens with the lymphatic system, the kidneys, and the skin. So if your kidneys cannot cycle out this lymph, if you're not pooping every day, if you're not staying as hydrated as you can be, this is going to lead to a backup. If it's not going to come out through urine or through stool, then it's going to start coming out through the skin. This is why a lot of people get breakouts, rashes, psoriasis, acne, etc. It is a backup of this because there is an excess waste load that is not being taken care of. So we have to get over this mindset that, like, oh, something's on the skin, we have to apply something topically because that's probably the problem. Now, that can be the case, of course, if you burn yourself or, there's trauma or something like that to the skin, then of course that's a different story. But we're not talking about that for the most part. We're talking about things that generally are not brought on by something like that. It's not acute, in other words. So that's a really important part here. So these kidneys, like I said, are our primary eliminating organs for this lymphatic system, this sewer system. And we have, again, it comes down to chemistry, right? We need to have a balance between alkalizing agents and acidic agents. And if we're in a toxic acidic environment, a analogy for that could be inflammation. Things tend to stick together. They tend to clump up. A lot of these products that are ultimately excreted are acidic. Think about it like uric acid, lactic acid. All of these different acids are ultimately should be excreted ideally through the kidneys via the lymphatic system. If this is backed up, or if there is a high acidic burden on the body, it can then, one of the drawbacks of that can be issues with the skin. Now, did you know we have over 3,000 different diagnosable skin conditions out there? I ain't gonna lie, I don't know what all of them are. To be perfectly honest, I don't think most dermatologists know what all of them are. And what we found is actually if you go to different dermatologists, they might not necessarily diagnose you the same way, but it leads to issues. But what we do know is what some of the most common ones are: acne, eczema, rosacea, hives, shingles, psoriasis, cold sores, plant rashes, skin tags, athlete's foot, moles, liver spots, melasma, warts, seborrheic dermatitis, skin cancer. We have autoimmune type disorders, which are directly gut related, like psoriasis or dermatomyositis. There's plenty others out there that, we don't need to necessarily go into. Each of these, though, is complex. And there's a lot of, general terms, and they could be ambiguous and obviously sound, scary. But like what we're seeing is these are major problems. We're seeing now that skin conditions are frequently cited among the most common health problems that we see in the US. And this is up there with things like obesity, hypertension, and cancer. This is according to Dermatologic Clinics, the journal. Quote, morbidity and mortality from skin conditions are both expected to increase, and the prevalence and healthcare spending related to skin disease are considered among the fastest growing of any medical condition. So more people are getting more skin problems and they're going for more conventional treatments. That's ultimately what you're learning. So, what is causing this? Well, there's a lot of things that we're going to get to in the back end, but like, let's talk about first, like how conventional medicine tends to treat these. And in this case, this would probably be your uh, dermatologist. So, there's a few different routes you can go. They're usually going to be one of these six. So, there'll be antibiotic, antiviral, antifungal, antihistamines, steroids, or some sort of immunosuppressing drug, particularly if you fall more into the um, autoimmune type category here. But as you know, like each of these comes with its own set of side effects. So I want to go through each of these, taking like an example of like a common one that would be used. So, like if we start with antibiotics, like some of the side effects that might come. And a side effect, by the way, is not a side effect. It's just an undesired effect that wouldn't be as marketable. So kind of keep that in mind. But, some of the common ones from, say, penicillin: nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, vaginal itching or discharge, headache, swollen, black or hairy tongue, thrush, diarrhea that is watery or bloody, fevers, chills, body aches, urinating less than usual or not at all, severe skin rashes. Isn't that the thing it's supposed to be fixing? Severe skin rash. Uh, Changes in cognition, confusion, unusual thoughts or behavior, potential for seizures. Maybe it's viral. Maybe we'll try something like acyclovir. Well, what are some of the side effects for that? Pain, swelling, redness again. Wait, isn't it supposed to fix the skin? And you'll find this kind of over and over again: stomach pain, abdominal pain, changes in urination, increased thirst, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, weakness, black tarry stools, blood in the urine or stools, chills, fever, sore throat, hallucinations. Again, if you're using this for skin, why are some of the side effects things like hives or red spots or bleeding or bruising or blistering, peeling, loosening of skin? Doesn't that doesn't add up? If you're taking it to supposedly help with your skin, why are there a lot of side effects associated with the skin? Let's take, a common antifungal. Nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, mild itching or rash, headaches, dizziness, breast swelling, impotence or loss of sex drive, dizziness, fainting, severe depression, confusion, thoughts of hurting yourself, stomach pain, yellowing of the eyes. So that's liver damage, essentially. Antihistamines, if you think it's an allergic type reaction, dizziness, drowsiness, dry mouth, nose or throat, constipation, blurred vision, fast or uneven heart rate, seizures, tremors, mood changes, easy bruising, bleeding, or unusual weakness, feeling short of breath. Steroids are used a ton for rashes, eczema, and the like. Some of the side effects: skin thinning. We know this actually with steroids in general. So they will they inhibit the ability to create collagen. So it could lead to muscle wasting, but also issues with the skin. Stretch marks, easy bruising, enlarged blood vessels, localized hair thickness and length, steroid rosacea, so steroid acne. In other words, the steroids themselves are causing acne. Periofficial dermatitis, pustular psoriasis. That's a mouthful. Pustular psoriasis. Immunosuppressants. So if you think it's autoimmune, what are some of the side effects that can go with that? Pain, especially in the upper stomach or shoulder. Easy bruising, bleeding, pale skin, feeling lightheaded or short of breath, upset stomach, hair loss, skin rash. Again, are these fixing the problem or are they contributing? So we're seeing where a lot of conventional medicine is trying to throw band-aids on these problems without figuring out what the cause is. And the cause is, again, we have to come back to this concept of the ecosystem. Is the ecosystem in balance or is it out of balance? Chances are it's out of balance, and now it's manifesting as something going on in the skin. So what are some of the big ones? Like, what are the things that are going to disrupt your microflora? Is it going to be things like antibiotics or any of the medications we talked about? Yes. Is it going to be toxic processed foods, seed oils, dairy, etc.? Is that going to do it? Yes. Are your conventional antibacterial soaps going to do it? Yes, because you're stripping that bacterial layer that exists on the skin. Uh, your conventional household cleaners, your personal care products, your cosmetics, a sedentary lifestyle. If you're not sweating and getting those toxins out, they're going to eventually come out one way or the other, and that can lead to rashes or issues with the skin. So that's a big one. And of course, any other sort of physical, chemical, emotional stress, heavy metal exposure, even due to, cans, if you're using canned foods that are lined with BPA, if you're using certain injectables that have things like aluminum in them or mercury, we know the issues with thimerosal. There's a lot of things that can lead to this. And if you're saying, well, what about my beauty products? What are some of the things you want to look for? Well, some of the most common things in your skin products that you might want to get rid of are things like parabens, synthetic colors, fragrances, phthalates, triclosan, SLS or sodium lauryl sulfate, formaldehyde, toluene, propylene glycol. And most conventional sunscreens, they're going to have things. Aluminum can actually be in a lot of different deodorants. That's a big thing. And we know we have lymph nodes in our underarms. So if you're putting something on there that we know at least 50% of is already going to be absorbed, 60%, probably more, that's a big deal. That's going to get into the system. And if we take aluminum, for example, we know that heavy metals can cross the blood-brain barrier like aluminum via and affect the lymphatic system, which is the body's or the brain's, I should say, um, lymphatic system on its own. So if that gets backed up, now you can have something known as quote unquote leaky brain. So we wonder why our energy levels are low, or we're not thinking straight, or we're not remembering things like we once were. This might be one of the reasons. Is it what's in your water? So I talked a little bit about this today, but chlorine's a very common thing found in your tap water. So chlorinated water can have long-term effects on the human skin. Chlorine can destroy as much of the needed protein within your body, and short-term, it could lead to dry, itchy skin. If you're constantly using chlorinated water, it can lead to very dry skin. It's going to affect that microbiome on the skin. So that's a really big reason as to why this could happen. If you're chronically stressed out, this can absolutely do it too. Whether it's a physical, chemical, or emotional stress, because what happens is cortisol is going to rise. And what happens is when we're in this sympathetic fight or flight dominant state, yeah, that's great if we have to get away from where we need to go or we need to survive in the next, 5 minutes, but it's not great long term. What happens long term is you reduce the amount of proteins that you're going to make, like collagen, that's going to weaken the skin. It's also going to increase protein breakdown over time. So not only are you not creating the protein to replace what's broken down, you're actually breaking more down at a higher rate. It's going to affect your skin's ability to regenerate and heal because, again, parasympathetic is rest, digest, repair. So you're not repairing if you're constantly in a stressed fight or flight state. It's going to shrink actually lymphatic tissue. So again, a lot of this cleansing, most of the blood when we're in a sympathetic state, 75% of the blood that would go to your digestive organs, to these repair mechanisms, are shunted out to the arms, to the legs, because we need to fight or run away to survive. So we have decreased lymphatic system function, decreased gut function, and chances are, if you've used any of these medications that we mentioned in the past, there likely is some sort of gut dysfunction. I am yet to see a skin problem that does not have a gut component or an autoimmune type issue that does not have a gut component. So you have to look inside first, and we'll get to that in a second. So once we first step is you got to get the stuff that's causing it out. And I know that's tough because if you've been taking steroid creams for a while, trying to keep things under control and you stop, short term, things might get a little worse, but long term, you can actually fix and reverse it if you give yourself the time and patience to do it. And I mean this wholeheartedly. Like I said, I had breakouts and stuff for a while when I was going through my health journey, and ultimately they just stopped, and I stopped using the products. But you have to stop adding to the toxic load, or at least minimum control what you can. And what you're putting on your skin is something you can control day in, day out. And I know it's frustrating. I know there's a lot of, image type of things that come, if we have breakouts and you might not want to go out in public and stuff like that. But like, it is something we're going to have to go through. So probiotics, interesting point. So I generally don't recommend a ton of probiotics, but we do have to optimize and recontextualize our gut flora, build that back up. How do we do that? It's primarily starting with getting a lot of fruits and vegetables in, because that is going to provide the fiber, the food that these microbes need. You need those prebiotics. That is going to come from what you eat on a regular basis. So ideally, whole organic fruits and vegetables are going to make up the majority, if not all, of what you're eating. That's the start. That's the baseline. If this is something you struggle with, or adding a lot of fiber in the beginning is too much, great. Start juicing some vegetables and add lemon or ginger. Start blending the fruits. It's much easier to absorb that way, and it's less of an issue on the gut. These are easy ways to start that anyone can take advantage of to start healing this stuff, so you can start not only healing your inside, but you also heal outside. There's actually this rule, or law, I should say. It's called Herring's law of healing or curing. And healing starts from the top down, which means mental. You have to get your mindset right, ready for the long term. From the inside out, what is the most outermost part of our body? Oh, it's the skin. So we have to start with looking inside and not just worrying about like these topical things, because they might be helpful short term, but if you're not addressing the internal environment, it's not going to last as long as we'd like. So, what are some foods and things like that? I mentioned a lot of these plants and stuff. Are there certain nutrients and things that could help? Well, dark leafy greens in general, your spinach, your kale, your arugula, your herbs. I love herbs, cilantro, basil, parsley, spices. All are great for promoting optimal function of your detoxification pathways. These are loaded with antioxidants. Many of these are chelators for different types of um, either metals or toxins, so you can help eliminate them, provided you're going to the bathroom. This is why when I work with folks, the first step is making sure we can go to the bathroom at least once a day. If you're having a bowel movement every 3 to 4 times a week, we got to get that up to at least once a day, and ideally it would be 2 to 3. Antioxidant rich foods, so that can include some of those, but your berries, your fruits, going to be super, super helpful with this. Uh-oh, got some outside noise here, so we're gonna have to let that go for a second. um, Carotenoids, really helpful. So astaxanthin is something that's been I've talked about before, especially when we're talking about sun exposure, but also helpful for your skin in general. There's one I called super xanthan. If you want, you can message me. I'll send you a link for it, for the one I like. You can also check out all the brands I like. By the way, if you check out my book, Nature's Kitchen and Cabinet, at the bottom, all of them are there. Um, Vitamin A. So vitamin A, we know, is important for healthy vision, bone growth, development. It's also important for the synthesis of steroid hormones in the body, but also for skin health. So a lot of your orange foods, right? Your sweet potatoes, your carrots, your squash, but also red and yellow foods too. So watermelon, tomatoes, apples, apricots, prunes, a lot of leafy greens. Leafy greens are going to be rich in it too. Um, and you'll notice, like, as they begin to go bad, you'll notice a lot of leafy greens turn yellow. That's because those carotenoids are starting to show through, whereas the chlorophyll is primarily more active when they are closer to, well, living. Of course, this is the time they're doing the mowing. Vitamin E. So vitamin E rich foods, super, super helpful. A lot of foods that are, or a lot of vitamins, I should say, fat soluble vitamins are going to be really helpful for skin health. So, what are your great sources of these? Nuts, seeds, legumes, seaweeds are actually fantastic options. Peas, spinach, broccoli, avocados, fantastic sources of vitamin E. And again, it starts with what we're putting into the system. As far as specific foods, okay. Papaya. So papaya is rich in beta carotenes, but also enzymes that are going to help with digestion. You could actually use papaya topically to help with the skin. That's actually something that people. You could take the insides of the skins of papaya and apply them topically. Topically, and that could be helpful. Carrots, we talked about, also great, diuretic, but a great source of beta carotene, which would be helpful for, again, skin, eyes, liver function, etc. Cucumbers, believe it or not, very cooling, very hydrating. So they can also help with bladder and kidney function. So that, so cucumbers are fantastic for the kidneys, for getting those detoxification pathways open so that we can kind of get moving. Parsley, also very similar. Great for kidney flushes, great as a skin cleanser because it helps with detoxification. This is why juices like juices that have things like uh, ginger, lemon, parsley, cucumber. These are fantastic elixirs to help get those kidneys going. If the kidneys are going to be the thing that's slowing down your skin from healing properly. Other things, dry brushing, again, really helpful for lymphatics. But honestly, I find that general movement and exercise is going to be better. So sweating every day. But it's also a great way to remove some of those dead skin cells. So dry brushing would be fantastic. As far as herbs, so some of my favorite blood cleansers, kidney cleansers, liver cleansers to help start moving this stuff. Burdock root, dandelion root. Like these are two of my favorites. And it's no wonder once you get those kidneys, once you get the liver up and running, your skin is going to start healing on its own as well. This is why I use some of my favorites are things like Livco or Livton by MediHerb. These are some of my favorites that I use because they have these herbs in them, and they will help again get the liver working, get the kidneys working, so that we can excrete more properly, along with following some of the nutrition stuff that we kind of talked about. Essential oils. So there are some other ones that you could use topically that are actually really helpful with skin stuff. I'm just going to list them off. I'm not going to go into like the specifics, but if you want to learn more about them, again, just message me, or you can check out my book because there's a link to the ones I like there. Um, Basil oil, bergamot oil, frankincense oil, lavender, peppermint, rose oil, um, rosemary oil, sage oil, thyme oil. All these fantastic for maintaining the skin. Generally, when I'm using essential oils, I'll take about a drop or two of the essential oil. I'll mix that with about 5 parts of coconut oil, and you could apply it topically. Super simple. Get like a fractionated coconut oil and you add it, and you could apply it topically. Very simple, very great for fungal or yeast type stuff. Things like oregano oil can be really helpful. But again, topically can be really useful for use. Yes, I will post this. It will be on IG and it'll be on YouTube. And then this is why, again, when we go back to the foods, and I need a sip of water here. I apologize, but it's a lot of talking. What's going on, Dr. Julia Britz? How are you doing on this lovely Friday? Where are we going here? I lost my spot. Here we go. Oh, right. Superfoods. So I need my notes to kind of keep me on track here. So this is also why that, some of the environmental stuff, some of the stuff I didn't talk about. I mentioned this a little bit, but how we're treating our soils, how are humans, again, if we look at this from a fractal component, we have an ecosystem inside of us. Humans are part of this ecosystem that we call Earth. The things we're doing to our planet with herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, with monocropping, we're seeing the deterioration of our soil to a point where roughly 1% of it is considered nutrient dense at this point in America. And we're at a point now where we're looking at roughly 50 harvests we have left before a lot of this soil is literally going to be unusable. Now, we are still at a point where we can reverse this. That is how amazing this planet is. But it starts with how we treat our food. There's a reason why we've seen a skyrocket in herbicide, pesticide use, and a skyrocketing of autoimmune diseases, skin disorders, diabetes, cancer. It's not a mistake. This stuff is not only getting into our systems, like I talked about in my post yesterday with glyphosate, but it's also getting into the water supply. It's getting into our food, and our food is not becoming as nutrient dense because they get their nutrients from soil. And if the soil is constantly getting abused, which it is, we are ultimately going to be feeling that whether we, admit it or not. And this is already happening. So, Seeds of Doubt, I highly recommend if you have not seen that documentary. It's on YouTube. If you join my free group, I have it linked in the resources if you want to check that out. But Seeds of Doubt, I would highly recommend watching it. But this is why I work, and a lot of folks I work with, I start by getting a lot of them on organic, regeneratively farmed superfoods that have no pesticides, that are vine ripened, which means they're going to have the maximum micronutrient content that they could possibly have. We start cleansing the body, nourishing this. We also, again, the gut is such a large component of this, particularly when we're talking about autoimmune skin type orders or your just, eczema or acne. There is a gut component. So cleansing that out. Do we need to do a parasite cleanse? Usually the answer is yes, because in my opinion, I think they should be done at least once a year. Some will argue twice to seasonally. And honestly, I lean more between twice and seasonally. We have to be doing that on a regular basis if we want to start clearing our skin up. We have to keep our internal environment clean. And this is how you start. We have to get foods that are from regenerative organic farms. And the more that we support them, the better our health is going to be. And we're seeing that all the time. So we have to detox this stuff out of glyphosate. And I like using a product called Biomedic, which has been shown by the Detox Project to remove like 75% of the glyphosate within 6 weeks of your body, which is wild. And again, a lot of these other things. So cleansing can be really helpful. Getting a lot of these things in can be really helpful. And that is ultimately like where you start. So if you want to work together with me, if you happen to have some skin issues or there's gut issues involved, or, they've kind of come on and you're trying to lose the extra weight, which was me personally, um, you know, shoot me a message. Like I can absolutely start pointing you in the right direction, start either working together, or you could join the inner circle and start going through this on your own with me, because I'm on these live calls once a week to troubleshoot for everyone. So, that's what we have for today. I hope this is helpful. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to learn more. Again, you can reach out to me on IG at Dr. Vincent Esposito. You can email me, Dr. Vincent Esposito at InsideOutHealthWellness.com. If you want to use some of these programs and cleansing programs that I use, message me, email me, and I'll be more than happy to, share it with you. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you guys next time. Okay.